To Fiona Williams now. And how are you, Fiona?
I'm good.
Yes, well, I'm feeling good too. Yesterday was a beautiful day, lovely and sunny. Started.
A stunning day.
Yes, exactly. And we've had some funny weather, a little bit of rain. The ground's really dry still. Yeah, so.
I think the one thing about gardeners is we never seem to have a normal season, but this summer has been really, really strange. I was having a look at the rain gauge a few minutes ago, and we've had 400 millimetres already this year, which is very high for this time of the year, but it's just fallen in two big chunks. So we had about 200 millimetres at our place in the first 10 days of January, and then nothing at all. So such a dry February. March was not a drop. And then we had another 160-odd millimetres in April. So it's just been very wet, totally dry, and then very wet again. So the poor old plants don't know what they're doing.
Definitely, yeah. I think we've lost... A couple of our plants are turning up their toes and looking unhappy, and yet they've coped with many different seasons since they've been in.
Oh, I lost so many. We went away for a little bit of time in March, and I thought the garden would be all right. I'd set a sprinkler up on a timer and for the pots, and I thought we'd be okay. I usually am at that time of the year. But, it was a disaster. What happened, I think we must have had a possum crawling around. Anyway, he knocked the sprinkler off onto its side. So rather than sprinkling a large area, it was going up and down in the air.
Oh, dear.
And I lost so many of the pots because it was so dry and so hot over March and no extra rain. So it was a bit devastating to come home to it.
Definitely, it sounds like it. Yes, probably it was after some water.
I would have liked a bit of water, but never mind. But the interesting thing about a season like this is you never quite know what plants are going to survive and what aren't. I've got one of the big leaf salvias, usually a lovely thing. It's called pink parfait. And it's got quite big leaves and really big sort of peachy, pinky orange flowers. And it's a pretty plant when it grows well. But it's one of those plants, I've just got it growing in a slightly challenging spot, and each season it thinks, will it die? And then it thinks, no, it'll keep going, so I just keep nursing it along. Anyway, this March killed it entirely.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I came back to this enormous great shrub. It's about 2 metres tall, dead as a doornail. So I thought, right, that's made the decision for me. It's going. So I left it a couple of weeks and then got into that bit of the garden and started taking it out. I thought I had something ready to put there in its place. And there it was. The thing has been reshooting from the base. So there's this great big plant all ready to go again, just when I'd made the decision it was heading out. So, I don't know what I'm going to do. I pruned back the dead bits and I'm still thinking about what to do with the plant I've got to go in its spot.
Yes, we have an olive tree in a pot that does that. If it has a bad season, it'll die off, but it'll grow again from the base.
Sometimes it's so frustrating. You just wish if they keeled over, you can just make the hard decision, take them out and put something more suitable. But if they keep struggling, you feel you've got to look after them and maybe it's trying so hard, we'll give it another go.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, the other thing, I don't know if you're having it, but I'm getting odd sort of plant diseases coming in this year. And I think it's probably the rain, the dry, and then the rain. And things that normally look quite good this year, for example, I started pruning a rose a couple of days ago. I know it's not the usual time to prune a rose, but it was sitting outside my kitchen window and it was covered in black spot. And I just thought, I can't bear looking at this any longer. So I thought, right, I'll get out the secateurs and chop it back. And in addition to the black spot, I've never in my life seen so much scale on a rose at my place. All of the branches were covered with these sort of little white sort of creatures, and it's a scale problem. And normally my roses are pretty tough, but this year, scale had just taken over it. So anyway, in that case, I did prune it back. I pruned it reasonably hard, and I've sprayed it with some lime sulphur, which will hopefully deal with the scale, and let it go reshoot. So it'll be okay, but it's an odd season, and you just have to be prepared for new problems.
I see, yeah. So as well as that, the ground is absolutely bone dry.
Well, it depends a bit where you are. My ground was bone dry, but as I say, we got 70 millimetres one day and about 60 a couple of days later. So I hate to say it, but our ground is pretty good.
Oh, wow.
And actually, I thought today, which is looking like another beautiful day, I'm planning to put in quite a lot of small native plants. I went to the Yarra Yarra Australian Plant Society plant sale last weekend, and they had, you always end up buying a lot more than you plan to. So I've got a couple of trays of healthy-looking little natives, and they're going to be going in today.
Right.
And I thought there's a bit of moisture in the soil, and the ground's warm, and it should really do well before winter strikes. So I thought, good day for planting.
And
it does depend a bit where you are.
And the weather is warm enough to get out in the garden and enjoy it. I think that's not normal. I think it gets a bit colder normally in April.
Yes. Look, I was looking at the forecast. I think today is going to be a stunner, and I was planning to be in the garden as much of today as I can expect, but the rest of the week looks a bit less than enthralling.
Yes, there's predicted rain for Monday.
Yeah, or at least cold.
Yeah.
But the leaves are turning. I've got a couple of Japanese maples, and the colour is superb this year. It's interesting the way in which they'll vary in terms of how intense the colour can be. But they certainly like this season, and they're just glorious orangey red.
Yes, I find that also. It's warm days and extremely cold mornings. I think we're going to get frosts this winter.
I think we might. Yes, I probably pruned the roses at the wrong time. But look, sometimes you just have to decide who's the boss of the rose, me or the season. So we'll hope the best.
Yeah, one thing about a rose, it will cut back well. You can cut it back and it will still cut.
I find it very tough.
Yeah.
I have cut roses at very odd times in the year, very often because I just get tired of looking at something really leggy and horrible and decide, right, I can't bear you any longer, and drop it back, and it might come on slowly, but it does recover. They're nice tough plants.
So what do you think that we might be having in the way of a winter this year, apart from the fact of very cold mornings and frosts? And do you think it might be as drier than it was last year?
Well, look, Hilary, I would hate to make a prediction.
Yeah.
It's very hard to tell. With my garden, I just tend to look after things, prepare as well as possible, and hope for the best.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm putting most of my effort into mulching because that extra rain we've had, I can see lots of little weeds coming up.
Yeah.
And I'm renowned. I go and collect fallen leaves from some of the trees that have got them. From some of the streets that have fruit trees. And I'll collect the leaves and dump them on the garden beds, and that keeps the weeds down and keeps really good for the soil health and stops things coming up that I don't want. So I'm spending a lot of time fossicking around for spare leaves at the moment because I don't have enough myself.
Right. Sounds like a really good idea. Gum trees will actually drop a lot of leaves too. They can be very useful. I find we've got pavers and weeds will come up between the pavers if I don't keep looking after them.
That's always frustrating, isn't it?
But I found the gum trees very good at keeping them down for me by molting on top of them. I guess non-native weeds don't like gum leaves and things like that, and they won't grow.
Oh, My approach generally with mulching is I use different things all the time. So I do use a lot of bush mulch, and I'll spread that. When we get the people round trimming the leaves and branches around the power lines, I tend to go out and ask if I can have some of their mulched, and they're always only too grateful to drop it off. So that gives, and they're mainly eucalypt leaves, so that's a sort of fresh bush mulch. So I sprinkle that, and then I put some non-native leaves on top, and generally just try and ring the changes.
Yeah.
And whenever I've got a moment, I throw a few handfuls of blood and bone on top of that. So it's just keeping on with different things. I've tried pine needles. I've tried some of the commercial mulches. I just keep tossing different things, not too much of any one, but a few eucalypts and a few non-natives is a good combination.
Right. I never thought of doing that. We just go and buy mulch from the... and with our more native beds, I buy bush mulch. But I'm a bit scared of putting bush mulch on non-native exotic trees, just in case they turn their toes up.
I don't have any problems with that.
Don't you?
As I say, I tend to, if it's got too much carbon in it, a lot of wood in it, I'll tend to put in some blood and bone before I put in the mulch, or on top, and water it in well. But generally, I just toss all sorts of things on the garden beds, and as long as it's not just one thing, I find it works just fine.
Terrific. Let's have a quick break, and we'll be back shortly. Now we're back with Fiona Williams, and she's been talking about the unseasonable weather and what you can do about it, I suppose.
Well, I'd hate to say that we can do anything about it. Maybe what is worth talking about, some of the plants that have liked the unseasonable weather. I find I'm growing lots of salvias, and at this time of the year, they are looking spectacular. There's all the salvias that have got little leaves, and there tend to be various varieties of Salvia microphylla or Salvia greggii, and they all cross with each other, and you get them in all sorts of colours. And they grow about half a metre tall or up to a little bit more. And they're just spectacular at the moment. I've got one called Purple Passion, and it's quite a big plant. And it's just covered in the most glorious, tiny, well, fairly small, but the most brilliant sort of reddish purple colour, and lots of other colours. So they've done really, really well. They like the season. And then there's the Salvia leucanthus, and they're the ones with the velvety flowers. There's one called pink velour and white velour, but the common one has got a purple flower. And again, those are wonderful. They obviously like the season, and they're just covered. There's spinebills taking the nectar from them all over the garden. They're a lovely thing at the moment.
Sounds beautiful. I found Westringias are growing well, and Eremophila doing well.
Aren't some of the Eremophillas wonderful? I've had a few problems with a couple of them. Some of the Eremophillas I've suddenly lost, but other ones just keep flowering. And how are your correas?
I don't know. I didn't notice those. Did you notice them, Tony, the correas?
They're still hanging in there.
They're hanging in there. They're doing well. You know, what I notice about Westringia is that the couch grass doesn't like it. It turns its toes up and underneath the Westringias, so I put more in.
That's the problem, isn't it? You get onto one thing and all of a sudden they're looking a bit doubtful. But one of the things I did, ever since I learned that I could strike the natives, I do like a plant where I can take some cuttings and all of a sudden you've got one plant and you end up with 50. I like that sort of plant. But the Westringias will strike well, but the correas are marvellous. I'll buy a correa or get a piece of correa from a friend, and they'll strike and I'll grow them well and then I can take more cuttings. So they're just really starting to flower.
So you can strike them?
Oh, like mad. Like mad.
Because they say they are very good at attracting small birds that sip the nectar.
Exactly. They're wonderful, and they're flowering sort of from now over through into winter. So they're beautiful plants, and you strike them without any problems at all. Just take a cutting, trim it off, shove it in a pot, and if you do it at this time of the year, it's still warm enough, the roots should come out quite quickly.
Well, good, because I like the correas. I think they're beautiful, and I do want to attract those small, nectar-seeking birds to the garden. So I buy mine, and I can't get enough of them. Some of them die back. Yeah, the more I can get, the better.
Hilary, you need to do some more. Take some more cuttings.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, although I do find it's quite addictive. As I say, when you prune back a plant and you don't look at it and think, I'll just put all those bits on the compost heap, you look at it and you think, I could get 20 cuttings from that lot. Sounds
like a great idea. Definitely.
Yes, although you do end up with vast numbers of pots. That's where we, with the Hurstbridge Garden Club that I'm a member of, lots of us take cuttings of all sorts of things, and we tend to have very cheap plants at all of our meetings, because the problem is when you've got 20 cuttings of something, you might be able to put some of them, but you really want the rest to go to a good home. So you need to be able to share them around the community.
So that's the beauty of joining a gardening club, is the sharing of cuttings and things like that, as well as advice.
Absolutely. We find people have struck plants, so there's little plants that you can sell or give away at a meeting. But people also bring samples of plants for the flower table, and we talk about what they are. And then afterwards, people take bits of the plant that you've talked about for the flower table and take it home and strike it. Yeah. So there's, a great way of sharing and your plants around. And if something's died, well, you can then say to people, does anybody remember that interesting variegated geranium or whatever it might be that I brought in? I've lost mine. And somebody will say, mine's doing well, I'll bring you another bit. So it's like an insurance.
It sounds like a really good idea. And what is growing well in your neighbourhood will grow well in your garden. Exactly. There aren't many plants that we're all growing that need, well-draining sand, because we don't have any well-draining sand out here. Exactly. So, yes, the best thing is to look at what your neighbours are growing and choose that. Even if you're not a member of a club, if their plants are doing well, they're the ones you go and pick from the nursery.
Absolutely. As long as you're not somebody who... Some neighbours have just taken all their soil away and they go and put in different soil and have plants that'll grow and look good for a while. But anything that's gone for a long time has got well used to Nillumbik clay and will do well in more Nillumbik clay.
So, so they're fairly big plant and they're well established. You can bet that they like the soil.
There's all sorts of things. I mean, and that's the issue. I like a good, tough plant that will survive the sort of strange seasons that we've had. And, if it's good and it's flowering well and it's survived for a long time, that's the one you share around. The delicate little plant that keeps dying on you, well, it's called natural selection. It's maybe not meant to be growing here.
Definitely. One of the things I notice grow well in our garden, even in shady spots, are cordyline and dianellas and things like that.
Oh, some of those. And they can look so good with those long strappy leaves against some of the smaller leaves or broader leafed plants. That was something I learnt late in my gardening career, was to get some good variation in leaf shape and how, you might have something and you look at the garden bed and you think it's all small-leafed and bitty, and then you put in some dianellas or something strappy and the whole thing just sits together and sings.
It does, doesn't it? And if you try and vary your leaf colour, You know, your grey silvery ones and your reddish ones and your dark green and your pale greens or your lemon greens.
Exactly. And some of those bluey ones.
Yes.
I've planted a bit of rue. Took some cuttings from a friend, and the rue has got a really bluey green leaf. And again, I've put it in a couple of spots. It's a good tough plant, and it'll just look so excellent against everything else.
So that's a good one to look out for if you want that bluey colour. Go for rue. Okay.
Yes.
I did notice that a lot of the salt bush is a silvery colour.
The salt bushes, yes, that's a really good solution. And they come in such different sizes too.
They do.
The big ones and down to quite little delicate ones, but that is a very, very tough plant.
So if you're looking in your garden and you're doing your high plants, your low plants, your strappy plants, your different coloured plants, it's not a garden, it's a piece of art.
It's artistry, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I used to say to people, I've got no artistic bones in my body, and then I look at some of my garden beds and I think, maybe I've got just a little bit of artistry in, because they can go so beautifully together.
Well, that's what Monet said. He was, of course, a famous impressionist painter, but in later life he started growing his water lily gardens and painting them. And he said, my real art is my garden, not my painting. Yes. So take it from a real artist. You are an artist, and we all are if we're growing a garden.
Well, an artist and a way of staying happy.
Yes.
I think, if life is tough, you can go out and do a bit of trimming and pruning and say hello to a few plants. It's a great way of calming things down when life's tough.
It is, isn't it? Now, we're going to have to finish off now. Thank you very much, Fiona. Perhaps that's buoyed us up and got us ready to tackle those garden problems.
No worries, Hilary. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.